what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter how lofty or how seemingly mundane your vision is, so long as it's something that is sufficiently exciting and magnetic that it pulls you towards it. I think visions have a really amazing power if you invest enough emotional energy in them. The vision wants to come true.
Hello and welcome to the Mindful Entrepreneur Podcast. We're your hosts, Tati and Jerry Jimenez.
Join us as entrepreneurs and brother and sister interview inspiring leaders in different fields to explore how they've achieved results and fulfillment. Let's get started as soul, passion, and business come together at The Mindful Entrepreneur. Last episode, we spoke with Roz Savage, who is the first and so far only woman to row solo across the world's big three oceans, the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian. Roz shared how our courage grows when we move forward and take action. We just need a seed of self-belief to start out, but the rest of the courage comes from doing. Listen now as we talk with Roz on the importance of having a clear vision, how it is key to realizing our goals, and the importance of maintaining the right mindset.
My old life just stopped making sense. I was drifting along, doing a job I didn't like to buy stuff I didn't need. One day I wrote two versions of my own obituary, the one I wanted and the one I was heading for. They were very different, and I realised that I wasn't on course for the kind of life that I wanted. Then I discovered a better way, finding happiness in what I do rather than what I own. I stopped drifting and started rowing.
Roz, you've talked about how courage can be enhanced by the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit and share with us how that got reflected in your own hero's journey?
Yeah, I love the hero's journey. I think it's such a great structure. And I'm assuming your listeners are familiar with this, but if not, go and watch Star Wars, the first one, because that's pretty much like to every last detail, the hero's journey. And I think there is something about seeing ourselves as the hero of our own journey. I know that when this idea had me to row across oceans, true to the structure of the hero's journey, I refused the call. I was like, no, I think you got the wrong person. That's not really my kind of a thing. But then, things changed and I decided to answer the call and then got taken into this very different world. And yes, I was there looking for, the elixir of life, the boons, the lessons that I was going to bring back into my life and hopefully get the opportunity to share those with other people as well. And it was actually, there was a technique that I used quite a bit when I was on the boat, and especially my first voyage. I think the first time that we try anything new is always the hardest time because it's such a steep learning curve and we feel like we're just doing everything wrong. And I was absolutely no exception to that. And I would often get very caught up in my own internal drama and would get very scared, anxious, even like giving myself a hard time. It wasn't just being angry at the ocean or the wind or the waves. It was like, why am I not enjoying this more? I was really determined I was going to enjoy this and I'm not. And so that was just putting more and more pressure on myself, and I could get myself into a right state about it. And I did get better though at noticing when I was starting to go down this downward spiral and almost stepping outside of myself and going, oh, poor little Roz, she's having a really bad day today. And start to narrate my story in the third person. And as I was narrating, I would say, luckily, then she remembered this technique that she could use. And, and so she managed to pull herself out of her mental funk and got her discipline back together and got back to the oars and continued heroically on her way. And I sort of do it tongue in cheek, being a bit silly with it, but it could really help me to stop taking myself so damn seriously and to just lighten up, have a laugh at myself, get over it and keep on rowing. So I think that's a way that I used the hero's journey to realize that actually the trials and tribulations are a part of it, because the hero doesn't learn anything if he doesn't go through all of those mishaps and misadventures along the way. That's sort of the point.
Out of curiosity, when you were in the middle of the ocean and you needed to sleep, was it like always very calm during those times? Did you ever get woken up abruptly?
Oh, several hundred times a night, probably. It was, I can remember one night out of the 520 or so nights I've spent at sea when it was really dead calm. And it felt so weird. I couldn't sleep because it was like, am I still in the boat? You know,
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. Most of the rest of the time, it was, you know, the boat's very tippy. It's banging around. It's noisy. The waves are crashing. The wind is howling, or the rain is thudding down onto the cabin roof. Most of the time it was pretty darn hectic at nights. And in a way, it didn't matter that much to me. In a way, when you're alone on a small boat, you almost don't want to be too soundly asleep. You sort of have always got half an eye and half an ear open for any unusual sounds that could indicate a large container ship bearing down on you, or the weather really kicking up. And really, it was just such a relief not to be rowing. You know, after 12 hours of rowing a day, you're actually really happy just not to be on a rowing seat, to take the pressure off that part of your body, and just to be lying down in a bunk. So yeah, it was interesting. And I had some pretty wild dreams as well on the ocean because I was being woken up so much. I had a lot of dreams about massive buffets of food, like all my favourite foods spread out like on a table a mile long. And I'd be like going along, picking up all my favourite foods, and all my best friends would be there, and I'd be having this great old party. And it was great because I'd wake up in the morning just going, great party last night. It was almost like my subconscious was filling in the parts that I was missing,
the gaps,
in my life on land. Yeah.
And that's great. Now that makes me think, you know, for somebody looking to try something new who might be afraid of failure, what specific steps would you share they can take to cultivate a courageous mindset?
Yeah, I think the first one is that, you know, shine your spotlight of attention onto the fear. And the thing that seemed about 20 foot tall, you'll probably find out is about, you know, 20 centimeters tall. Also, keep reminding yourself of why this was important in the first place. Like, why did it seem like a good idea to embark on this journey? What was the motivation? And reconnect with those reasons why. I think what would be another good example of overcoming the fear is I had one of those sort of aha/dough moments one day when I was rowing along, and everything was terribly uncomfortable. I had tendonitis in my shoulders and saltwater sores on my bottom, and my cabin was all damp and the sleeping bag was going moldy, and, you know, everything was just horrible and icky and uncomfortable. And I was just like, grumble, you know, everything's so uncomfortable. And then I went, oh, hold on a moment. Now I remember, I kept telling people I wanted to get outside my comfort zone. And by definition, getting outside your comfort zone is going to be uncomfortable. Don't. So actually, the fact that everything is so uncomfortable, that I feel physically and mentally and emotionally uncomfortable, means that I am massively succeeding in what I set out to do. I'm not failing at all. This is actually what I wished for. And, you know, the old cliche about outside your comfort zone is where all the growth happens. It's so true, but by definition, that is going to feel uncomfortable. It means that you're trying something new and challenging. So you just have to kind of reframe it and see it as, this is what me succeeding feels like. This is not what me failing feels like. One of my texts for the Yale class was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which I just absolutely love, because after you've read that book, you really just have no right to complain about anything ever again, because being a prisoner in Auschwitz and Second World War and doing hard labor and you don't have the appropriate clothing and your comrades are being gassed and and your family you haven't seen in years, it just doesn't get any worse than that. And he was still able to find the dignity and the purpose, not in the belief that he was going to survive it, because he just didn't know whether he would, but he managed to find the meaning in the suffering itself. He just said, for now, this is my job. This is what's going on, and I'm going to make this as empowering an experience as I can. And he also found a lot of meaning in helping the people around him, not just being all wrapped up in his own misery. So just one of those little books that just packs such an inspiring punch. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's great to know that we can expand and grow personally, and also grow our courage as we're going through the journey, like you mentioned before. Now, you've also inspired corporate audiences and have written about the lessons that the ocean or that ocean navigation can teach us about doing business. Can you expand on that a little?
Ooh, well, there are quite a lot of dimensions to that. So let me just try and pick some highlights. And I hope these are ones that you wanted me to pick up on. I found it very helpful to have a compass of values, is how I think of it. That when we get clear about what's really important to us, like for me, it was sustainability, it was personal growth, it was adventure and freedom. So that when I was feeling conflicted about, particularly in the run up to the first voyage, when there was still an awful lot of trepidation, to just be really clear about my values and my priorities, so that when I had a wobble, I could check in with those again, and just make sure that I was holding a steady course according to my moral compass. Yeah. I found another part of it was really taking ownership of the project, but also my part of the bigger picture. So something I'd already started to do was really take ownership of my own life. I think up until that point, I'd been looking to, when I was a child, parents, teachers to sort of run my life, and then, to boyfriend, husband, boss kind of to run my life. Or, often I think we end up looking to friends and partners to make us happy. And of course, really, we all know that only we can make ourselves happy. So it was really like taking ownership of my own life, but it was also taking ownership of whatever I could do to help the cause of sustainability. Like saying this is so important to me that I'm willing to go out and put my life on the line for this. And so a third thing really would be the vision. I said that my head and my heart did battle for that first week between getting the call to adventure and actually accepting the call. By the end of that week, I had pretty much a fully formed vision of what I wanted my life to look like by the time I would have rowed across 3 oceans. Speaking at conferences at sort of government level, or high corporate level, to be doing book tours, to have people following my blogs, to actually have built that platform and hopefully be having some fun along the way, and to be making a difference for the better in the world. It was also interesting that towards the end of my corporate career, my self-esteem had really been going down the pan. I was not thriving in that world at all. And looking back now, I could see because my values and the values of the organization that I was working in were not even a little bit aligned. And that's why I felt like a square peg in a round hole. One of the other things that I really wanted to achieve through the rowing was to improve my self-esteem, to feel that I could take on a big challenge and make it happen with the sense of, I can actually, I can make things happen here. I can have a really big, hairy, audacious goal and get out there and make it happen. And I know that ideally self-esteem wouldn't be dependent on, external successes, but I think sometimes it does help just to be able to point at something and say, I did that. I took it on. It was a stretch, and I did it. So I suppose ultimately that's what a lot of us want, isn't it? Is to have that inner confidence and the sort of peace of mind that comes from knowing that we're living to our highest potential. Well, I don't think we could ever live to our fully highest, but at least getting closer to it. So that was another really important part of my vision. And even breaking that down to a simpler level, when I was on the Atlantic, yes, I had my vision of stepping ashore on the other side of the ocean when I was going to arrive in Antigua. But also the more uncomfortable life on board got, the more I had this amazing vision of this gorgeous hotel room in Antigua. This might sound really trivial, but hey, whatever gets you through it. And it was going to be this beautiful sort of tropical Caribbean room with shuttered windows and white muslin curtains and a bathroom with a shower and white fluffy towels and crisp white sheets on the bed, like all these things that I was desperately missing when I was on board my uncomfortable, cramped little boat with no running water. And it was just amazing that when I finally walked into my hotel room at the Admiral's Inn in English Harbour in Antigua, there it was, my fantasy hotel room. It was just everything that I dreamed of. Well, I spent about half an hour in the shower. It was great. It was, I think they thought I drowned in there. What I'm saying is, it doesn't matter how lofty or how seemingly mundane your vision is, so long as it's something that is sufficiently exciting and magnetic that it pulls you towards it. I think visions have a really amazing power if you invest enough emotional energy in them. The vision wants to come true. And in fact, maybe something I could mention here, which is jumping around all over my timeline here, but I hope you can keep up with this. What really helped me to take the leap out of the corporate world was an exercise in which I envisioned two versions of my own obituary. The one that I wanted and the one that I was heading for if I carried on as I was. And they were so, so different. And the weird thing was that even though the fantasy obituary seemed like a different universe, I mean, not just a different lifetime, but a different universe from the world that I was living in at the time, for whatever reason, it felt so vivid and so, it felt so me, even though it had no resemblance to my life, that even though I didn't initially make any conscious decisions to move towards it, I was actually terrified. I was like, oh, well, an awful lot of stuff would have to change for that one to come true. So let's shove it in a drawer and try and forget about it. But on some level, mostly subconscious, I think, I'd really bought into it. And so started to take what probably looked like some fairly bizarre decisions that released some things from my life that needed to go in order for me to start moving towards that fantasy obituary brackets vision. So I am just such a massive believer in having a vision and make it as colourful and, put the sounds and the smells and as multisensory as possible to just keep pulling you forwards, especially when it all gets a bit tricky to keep on going.
Yeah, I think part of the secret is having fun. At least that's what we try to do here.
Absolutely. It's, life's too important to be taken seriously.
And it is such a powerful exercise. When we read on your two obituaries, it is such a powerful exercise to see, where do I really want to wind up and where does my essence resonate? Maybe the life that's, like you were saying, it's not you at this point, but that was probably more resonating with the essence of who you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like my true self was going, I'm here. Have you forgotten about me? Let's
pick me.
Yeah. And I think, consciously I'm not aware of the connection, but I think there might be some connection to my father, who it was around the time that he was dying that I decided that I was going to do the rowing. He had a stroke and died 6 weeks later. And he sort of was in a steady decline during those 6 weeks. And one of the last coherent things that I remember him saying was, I never got around to ... And we never heard the end of the sentence, but I thought, I don't want to have regrets. Like when I'm in that situation, in, you know, the final bed, I don't want to be going, oh, there was that thing I really wanted to do and I never got around to it. And I know that it definitely had a similar impact on my sister, who around that same time also set out to travel around the world for a year. So I think it really brought it home to both of us that we just didn't want to end our lives having regrets about the life not lived. And another gift was his saying, whatever you do, put your whole heart into it. So, yeah, I guess I've taken that one to heart.
I love it.
All right, I think we're up to the fun part. So we're going to do a quick round of speed questions. So whatever comes to your mind, Roz.
Go for it. I'll pay attention.
All right.
This segment is brought to you by VitaFactor.com, helping to bring your business vision to life.
So here we go. What's your definition of success?
Not having any regrets, I guess, and being happy.
What's the most helpful affirmation you tell yourself?
I can do this. And if I can't, I'll learn something.
Love it. The ocean is?
Big, wet, scary, and very, very, very powerful. And also my best ever teacher.
My favorite place on earth is?
Wherever I am right now.
Fantastic. Roz, what is your next big adventure now that to finalize the interview?
Well, I have a sustainability project that will be unveiled by the end of the year, I'm going to say. And I will be announcing it via my website and newsletter. And it's really trying to build on everything I've done in the past it's not going to be a physical adventure though, or at least I hope not.
A little break.
The idea is that it should be more of an adventure in diplomacy, persuasion, and creating an opportunity for people to work together to create a more sustainable future. And that's probably more already than I should have said about that. You heard it here first.
We heard it here first, yes. Love it.
Well, thank you for sharing with us your adventures, your courage, your lessons. I think you're definitely having an impact on many lives. And we thank you again. We're honored that you were here with us. And we look forward to talking to you at some time in the future. Thank you for being here.
It's been such an absolute pleasure. And thank you for the work that you're doing to inspire people to be their best selves and to make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, and before you leave, both the Genius Spot and Vita Factor want to thank you, our awesome audience, for being part of our podcast. And if you found this episode of value, please share it with your friends and loved ones so they too can join the Mindful Entrepreneur.